following recording is a production of Kicking Out at 2 in conjunction with the WrestleMania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kicking Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kicking Out 2, along with searching WrestleMania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the WrestleMania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show.
This is the first leg of WrestleMania season here on Kicking Out at 2. I'm your host, Dave Rosenbluth, and this is Rand-O-Mania Part 2. Now, you're probably wondering what Rand-O-Mania is. Well, it's a concept that I brought together on this podcast a couple of years ago. My brother joined me, Justin, who is a regular contributor, and we talked about random WrestleMania topics and just, had a little fun with it. So I thought, why not do that again? But this time, I'm going to fly solo because Dennis is still a little bit under the weather. This week, or this episode, I should say, we're going to be covering some interesting topics that are WrestleMania related, celebrity matches. We're also going to be discussing canceled WrestleMania matches and why. Why were these matches advertised and then just automatically canceled? And then we're going to talk about multi-man, multi-woman, multi-person WrestleMania main events. Over the years, we've had championship matches that have not been straight-up singles matches. They've been either three-ways or four-ways. We're going to talk about the good and bad of that as well with this Rand-O-Mania 2. But before we do all that, you gotta do the cheap plugs. Otherwise, you guys won't know where we are. You guys won't know how to find us. So the first thing you can do is you can go on social media on Facebook, facebook.com/Kicking Out at 2, as well as our Twitter handle. It's Twitter, not X, Twitter in my world, @Kicking Out 2, KICK, the letter N, OUT, and the number 2. All kinds of pictures, videos, reels, links to archive shows, all that stuff's up there on the social media. Help create the fun with me that is nostalgic pro wrestling that I grew up on and I love so dearly. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. And secondly, you can also find those links to the archive shows over at our home on the WrestleMania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network over on Podbean. Search WrestleMania with a W. You'll find this show, Marking Out the Days, Hulkamania is Dead, Gaijin Wrestling Radio, Origins of Attitude. So many great nostalgic wrestling podcasts out there on the WrestleMania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Kobe Knight has got some stuff cooking up. I mean, he's been cooking for a while. It's been a couple of years. So, hopefully he gets on the horse and he can contribute to the network. By the time we get to Kobe's first show back on the network, it'll probably be WrestleMania 48. So, in all seriousness, he's got a young kid, so he's being a dad. But I'm just busting Kobe's balls. Hopefully, he'll be back soon, and he'll be contributing, and we'll be on this path that is nostalgic wrestling content on the WrestleMania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. So you can find all that stuff there. You can find WrestleMania, Kicking Out at 2, all that great stuff over on Podbean. So go check it out. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into this Rand-O-Mania. First, I want to talk about multi-person Mania main events. Are they good? Are they bad? I'll give you a few examples of some that worked out really well and some that didn't. Starting off with WrestleMania 20. WrestleMania 20 saw Triple H defend the World Heavyweight Championship against Shawn Michaels and the Royal Rumble winner Chris Benoit. Now, this was the first year for the brand extension that the Royal Rumble winner was able to choose the champion of his choice. And Chris Benoit, who was a SmackDown roster member, won the Royal Rumble, and then made the jump over to Raw, declaring his intentions to face the World Heavyweight Champion Triple H instead of the WWE Champion at that time, which was Brock Lesnar, which I kind of thought that was the direction they were going in. I know Heyman was the general manager of Raw at the time, or SmackDown, I should say, and he was kind of stacking the deck against Benoit, and I believe Benoit did have a controversial victory over Brock Lesnar in a tag match. So I thought that's where they were kind of leading to. But they pulled a swerve, and Benoit came over to Raw, declaring his intentions to face Triple H. But Shawn Michaels had some say in that because Shawn Michaels was never pinned, was never made to submit in his last man standing match with Triple H at the Royal Rumble. And he had some unfinished business that he wanted to attend to. So he was another roadblock in Benoit's way. of getting the opportunity. He ends up super kicking Benoit, and then Eric Bischoff and Stone Cold Steve Austin, who were the co-general managers at the time, they felt that to make things interesting for WrestleMania, that match take place under triple threat rules. So that was the first time that a championship had taken place under triple threat rules. However, it's not the first multi-man match, which I'll get to in a minute. So we get to WrestleMania, and to me, this is a fantastic triple threat match. The setup was good. The match itself, the way it was executed, Benoit was the underdog. Michaels and Hunter were established. They were trying to get rid of this pesky underdog in Chris Benoit so they can go kill each other. I thought the story was great, and it just made for a memorable moment in WrestleMania history when Benoit finally captured the championship, making Triple H tap clean in the middle in a barbaric war the three of them had in Madison Square Garden. One of the greatest main events of all time, in my opinion. I know it gets clouded with what Benoit did towards the end of his life, with his wife and his son, and the unexpected passing of all of them. But it's still a great match. You can't take that away. Now that's a good example of a WrestleMania multi-person main event. Now a bad example took place 4 years prior at WrestleMania 2000. Triple H defending the World Wrestling Federation Championship against The Rock, The Big Show, and Mick Foley, with a McMahon family member in every corner. Stephanie representing Triple H, Vince representing The Rock, Linda representing Mick Foley, and Shane representing The Big Show. I would have been fine if it was a straight-up singles, Triple H and Rock, to be perfectly honest with you. That's kind of what I wanted to see. However, Mick Foley was brought back to WWF programming at the time after losing a retirement match inside Hell in the Cell against Triple H at No Way Out a month prior. And then The Big Show, who had his issues with The Rock and the controversial finish surrounding the Royal Rumble where Rock's feet technically touched first, and setting up the match with him and Big Show at No Way Out, only for Big Show to win with some help from Shane McMahon. So it set the scene for a McMahon in every corner. And to me, this was just so convoluted, crowded. It was an elimination match. I think the match went way too long. And I honestly think that I still die on the hill that Triple H should have not retained the championship. I thought The Rock probably should have walked out the champion, considering what The Rock's character had gone through and what Triple H's character had put The Rock through for the past several months. So I think also too, having a McMahon in every corner, it just overshadowed the competitors in the match as well, because then it made it about the McMahon family, and essentially the finish was centered around Vince. Vince had a change of heart and decided that The Rock was not his champion, and that he was going to do the right thing for his family and would help Triple H keep the championship. His piece of shit son-in-law that drugged his daughter and married her. It was just way too convoluted. Foley comes back after he'd been retired, and it was an overhyped main event that did not deliver whatsoever. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they have shied away from doing four-ways or triple threats in some of these WrestleMania main events or championship matches that are in the top of the card. That's an example of a bad WrestleMania multi-person main event. Another good one comes at WrestleMania 30. Randy Orton defending the championship against both Batista and Daniel Bryan. Now, this was a situation where several circumstances led to this match. The original plan, and this has been documented, this is on WWE documented footage. It was actually on the Daniel Bryan documentary on the network a couple of years ago. The original plan was Orton Batista and then Daniel Bryan against Sheamus. And considering how over Daniel Bryan was and how popular he was with the audience, it was just kind of a head scratcher. Management didn't really see a whole lot in him. They saw that he was good enough to be featured on the show, but not in a prominent role. And so Bryan would end up getting snubbed out of that Royal Rumble, which was just another baffling decision, in my opinion. Then Batista would win, which the audience was not thrilled with. Sets up Batista and Orton. Coincidentally, with all that taking place, the fan backlash of Bryan not being in the Rumble and Batista winning, given Bryan's momentum and his, the fans, solidly behind him for over a year and a half, CM Punk walks out on the company. And now they're like, oh, shit, what are we going to do? So Punk, who was another popular performer at that time with the WWE fan base, they decide to pivot and use Bryan to get him into the main event by having him face Triple H at WrestleMania. And while this wasn't the planned outcome to get to WrestleMania, all these circumstances, I think, just kind of lined up perfectly. And they felt they had no choice but to put Bryan in this and have him win the championship, because they didn't want to disappoint the audience, because the audience was not happy with what they were seeing. As far as the execution of it goes, like I said, it was a matter of circumstances that led to this. However, the match itself and the story that night, I was in attendance at the Superdome, not the Silverdome, brother, the Superdome, and the crowd was absolutely crazy for Bryan, especially that first match when he faced Triple H. And then when he won the title, just the place went nuts. And it was a great story. Bryan overcoming the odds yet again, defeating the evil boss in Triple H in the first match, getting injured in the process, coming in not 100% in the triple threat match against two guys who were fresh as a daisy, Randy Orton, the champion, and Batista. It was just a really good setup all around. It may not have been the plan from the start, but it was still a good setup all around nonetheless. Another example of a bad triple threat or multi-person match would have to be the women's main event at WrestleMania 35. Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch. Originally, the idea was to do Becky and Ronda in the singles. They had some interactions on television a few months prior, and Becky's momentum with the audience kind of getting behind her, almost very Daniel Bryan-esque. People wanted to see that singles match. And then Becky wins the Royal Rumble. Ronda's still the champion. It looks like it's going to be Becky and Ronda at WrestleMania. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Vince decides, and he comes out on TV and announces that Charlotte Flair is going to be included in this match, making it a triple threat match. Which, at the time, I kind of supported, because I thought, you know what? Charlotte's been holding her own. And I think if they're going to put the women in the main event, she definitely deserves a spot there. And I also thought, too, from a storyline standpoint, Vince shoehorning her into the championship match will get some heat on Charlotte and will also get people to get behind Becky even more. But then they overcomplicated the story. Then they had Becky get suspended, and she lost her title shot. Then she won the title shot back. And then Charlotte won the belt from Asuka, so then they put both belts up for grabs, and it was winner take all. And not to mention, they put them on. They announced that they were going to go on last, which I had no problem with. Okay, the women had worked their ass off to get to that point. I think they deserved it. However, I think it was a terrible idea considering how long that WrestleMania was. Okay, that WrestleMania was almost 6 hours long. The main event started after midnight. It's technically the first two-night WrestleMania. And at that point, they were trying to create this big moment for Becky Lynch and to crown her as this top female star in the main event of WrestleMania. The first time the women ever main evented WrestleMania. And the crowd was just so out of it because they had watched 5.5 hours of wrestling and they were just tired of it with like 16 matches on the card between the kickoff show and then the main card. You had like 15, 16 matches. It was a lot of beef. A lot of beef, on that plate. And the audience, they just couldn't keep chewing on it. And I think that kind of deflated Becky's moment. To me, I felt she was already a top girl anyways. She was a top star in the women's division. WrestleMania and that picturesque moment would have cemented that. And to some degree it did. But at the same time, I felt because of the length of the show and the setup to get her there, I thought it just kind of took away from the moment. It didn't really seem as important. And also, too, I think the match was not as good as I expected it to be. Even the convoluted finish with Becky kind of rolling up Ronda, and there was some controversy surrounding if Ronda's shoulder was up or not. I don't know if that was by design to give Ronda a title shot. I really don't know. But it wasn't a good situation at all. And that's no disrespect to the women. Which brings me to my next point. Okay? I'm talking about these examples of good and bad multi-person WrestleMania main events. And there's a little bit of a groundswell on social media of making this year's main event with CM Punk and Roman Reigns into a triple threat match. And there's been two different ideas behind that. Now, I kind of alluded to it on the last episode, but let me delve further into this. CM Punk is scheduled to defend the World Heavyweight Championship coming up next weekend at Elimination Chamber against Finn Balor. And Finn Balor is kind of being taken more seriously now. He's not just some sidekick in the Judgment Day. They're trying to rebuild Finn Balor, if you will. And a lot of folks online, a lot of big Finn Balor fans, want to see Balor in the main event of WrestleMania, whether he either wins the title from Punk at Chamber or he gets shoehorned into that match, making it a triple threat match somehow. Now, I'm not really for this idea, okay? And here's why. I like the idea that they're rebuilding Finn Balor, but I like the idea of Punk and Roman being a straight-up singles match because there's a lot of meat on that bone with the two of them, okay? The way they began the build-up with Roman declaring the title shot against Punk at WrestleMania, I thought was excellent. It makes that match must see so far. Okay, time will tell how the rest of the build-up is going to go. But it just doesn't. I can't buy into Finn Balor being this underdog character against the likes of Punk and Roman after he had been this kind of like afterthought in the Judgment Day group. And I think that there's still more story to tell with him of building him up and then him leaving the Judgment Day group. Now, I could see something, like I said on the last episode, with him and Dominic Mysterio. Because it seems like him and Dom have been at odds for the last year or so. But I just can't see him involved in this triple threat, in making it a triple threat match. Now, as much as I really would enjoy seeing Punk and Roman in a singles, there's only one person that I think that they could include in this in that championship match to make it a triple threat, and it would make sense across the board, and that's Seth Rollins. Now, Seth Rollins is currently out of action. The last few weeks, the rumors have been that there's a good chance Rollins is going to be cleared in time for WrestleMania. And the rumor was it was going to be him and Braun Breaker at WrestleMania. That's why they began this Masked Man angle, where Rollins was going to be revealed eventually as the Masked Man, kind of picking off the Vision. Well, Braun Breaker got hurt, had a serious hernia injury, emergency surgery. They're saying he might be out indefinitely. They're saying maybe 4 to 5 months. They're saying maybe 6 weeks. It's all over the board. Who knows? Maybe this is going to be a storyline for Unreal on Netflix, Season 3. I don't know. But if Breaker is out and Rollins is cleared to return, I would not be opposed to Rollins sticking his beak in and being inserted into the match, making it a triple threat. Now, I know a lot of people are not really thrilled with that idea because we saw that match last year. However, there's different circumstances. There's another layer to this story with the three of them. Now the championship is involved. Not Paul Heyman's favor, but the championship's involved. And Rollins can lay claim to an opportunity at the championship because when he got hurt, he was never beaten for that title. They had to vacate the title, and they created a tournament, which Punk won. So there's an easy way to get Rollins in if they wanted to make that main event. Plus, the history he has with Roman, the history he has with Punk, the match from last year they can fall back on. I think there's a great opportunity to find a place for Rollins on WrestleMania in that form. And I think it would work. Now, I wouldn't be opposed if Rollins was not involved in the championship either, and they had him go after, let's say, Bronson Reed or Logan Paul from the Vision. I don't think that would be. I think that would be an ideal scenario for his return, and I don't think it wouldn't. I don't think it would ruin. It would ruin his return by putting him in that situation, even though he was originally rumored to face Breakker. So, yeah, those are just some examples of some good and bad multi-person WrestleMania main events, and maybe the potential we'll see one this year. Who knows? But I think if the story's right, if it makes sense, obviously, then I think it calls for making the championship a triple threat. But if it's done and you're forcing someone in because you want them in that match or you want them to have a spot in the card, then it just doesn't work for me. So let's move on here. Let's talk about canceled WrestleMania matches. Now, I was doing some research recently, and I noticed that there are a fair number of canceled WrestleMania matches over the years that were advertised on the card on television, and for whatever reason, they were canceled, pulled, with really no explanation. The first one that comes to mind, from WrestleMania 8, it was advertised that the British Bulldog would take on the Berserker one-on-one at WrestleMania 8. And this was actually an interesting story. The show was running short it ran a little long, and I guess Vince went to Davey backstage and asked him if he would be able to do a 1-minute, squash match. And Davey said he does not want to do that, and he'd rather not do a match at all. And Vince said, okay, and pulled the plug. And that was when the Berserker and Davey Boy got taken off the WrestleMania card. And it was actually Owen Hart and Skinner, I think it was Skinner that spoke up and said, I'll do the 1-minute match, boss. And that's what we saw when Skinner and Owen Hart wrestled at WrestleMania, that quick finish, like literally a minute or under between those two. So that's kind of funny that Davey Boy refused to do a squash match at WrestleMania, and Vince said, okay, well, you're just not going to have a match at all. So that tickled me. Kamala and Bam Bam Bigelow were advertised to face off at WrestleMania 9, and that was a situation where the show ran long. Now, upon doing my research, there was no reason given behind why the match didn't take place, other than on I believe it was the Coliseum home video exclusive, saw Kamala backstage petting the elephants from the Roman Empire theme when they had the elephants and the camels come out for the opening ceremonies. Kamala was feeding and petting the elephant, and there was that was kind of implied that was the excuse why he couldn't have his match with Bam Bam Bigelow, because he was too busy with the elephants. That was something that was placed in post-production on the videotape after the fact. But I don't recall there being a reason on television why the match never took place. Another match that was advertised for WrestleMania was WrestleMania 10, was going to see the return of Earthquake taking on Ludwig Borga. The reason behind this match not taking place was Ludwig Borga shattered his ankle during a match at a live event, and instead of Borga wrestling, it was Adam Bomb that had taken his place. And as we saw at WrestleMania that year, Earthquake squashed Adam Bomb within a matter of seconds. So I would imagine that Earthquake and Ludwig Borga might have gotten the same result. Also on that WrestleMania, another match that was advertised, canceled, and didn't take place altogether was the 10-man tag after the ladder match. It was Jeff Jarrett, IRS, the Head Shrinkers, and the model Rick Martel supposed to take on the team of Tatanka, the 1-2-3 Kid, the Smoking Guns, and Bob Sparkplug Holly. As we saw on the WrestleMania 10 broadcast, after the ladder match, they showed the participants of the heel team, IRS and Double J and Head Shrinkers and Martel. They were all arguing over who was going to be the captain of the team. And they couldn't come up with a decision, therefore the match never took place. Now, the match would end up taking place on an episode of Monday Night Raw not long after that. But the reason why the match didn't take place was because Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon went over on their time for their ladder match. And it was Randy Savage that lost his mind backstage when they both came through the curtain, talking about how they were selfish and took away a WrestleMania payday from the following match. So if you guys out there in Fantasyland were really clamoring to see that 10-man tag between that hodgepodge of guys, you can thank Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon for that one. Another canceled match that took place at WrestleMania that was actually altered was it was originally announced that it was going to be Yokozuna going one-on-one with Vader at WrestleMania 12. Yokozuna had just recently left Camp Cornette, and he was a babyface, and Cornette had Vader in his camp or whatever, and Vader was his big man, and Yoko just wasn't performing up to the standards of Jim Cornette, and Yoko had enough of Cornette, bullying him, and therefore he was gone. Sets up the match with him and Vader, and Vader, at the time, the reason behind that, and that's something I had recently learned on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, Vader hurt his shoulder in a match with Hulk Hogan wrestling in WCW, and he never told the company when he joined the World Wrestling Federation, and that's why they began the angle where he assaulted Gorilla Monsoon, and Roddy Piper was brought in as the interim president of the World Wrestling Federation. So Vader could take some time off. He was suspended. He came back. They booked the match with him and Yoko, but realized his shoulder is not in the condition it should be in for a singles match. So therefore, they pivoted, making it a six-man tag team match. Yokozuna would team with Ahmed Johnson and Jake the Snake Roberts, and Vader would have the British Bulldog and Owen Hart as his partners. I could just imagine if Vader was healthy, what kind of a match that would have been at WrestleMania 12. That would be big meaty men slapping meat. That would be Big E before Big E. But yeah, that's what. Unfortunately, we did not get that singles match and at WrestleMania. And then the last match that's on the canceled WrestleMania match files. From WrestleMania 29, it was Cody Rhodes, Damian Sandow, and the Bella Twins scheduled to take on Tyrus, Lord Tensai, and the Funkadactyls in an 8-person tag team match. There was no reason given why this match wasn't scheduled to take place. I just remember at WrestleMania being there in attendance. I had the match card in front of me, and Punk and Undertaker were on, and then, next up I thought, it's going to be the 8-person tag match, and then all of a sudden, boom, Cena shows up. So I was like, oh shit, they got bumped. And then they would end up facing each other the next night on Monday Night Raw in that wild episode of Raw where Fandango was born. But yeah, I wasn't upset that match didn't take place. And you know what? For the most part, a lot of these matches I really wasn't upset that they didn't take place at WrestleMania. But I thought that was interesting. I thought I would share that with all of you, some of the canceled matches in WrestleMania history. All right, let's move on to another subject here. It's being rumored that Bad Bunny, controversial figure recently, taking part in the Super Bowl halftime show, love it or hate it, man's a talented performer and entertainer, and he is rumored to be taking part in this year's WrestleMania. Wouldn't be the first time he stepped in the ring. at a WrestleMania, no less. He performed at WrestleMania 37 with Damian Priest against The Miz and John Morrison in a pretty fun match. Now, when talking about Bad Bunny, I mentioned it on the last episode. Maybe the big rumor is him and Logan Paul. I know last year on WWE Unreal season 1, we got a glimpse of the whiteboard of the potential WrestleMania matches, and one of them was Dominic Mysterio and Bad Bunny. Maybe we'll see maybe they'll revisit that for this WrestleMania. I'm not quite sure. But I wanted to, after learning about this and kind of coming up with this concept, I thought, why not share with you my top 5 WrestleMania celebrity matches. Matches where pro athletes or celebrities took part in. I'm not talking appearances. Battle of the Billionaires with Donald Trump's not going to make this list. But there are matches that I put on here that, and it's a top 5. It's subjective. It's my top 5. If you guys have a different top 5, then put it out there and, I'll share it on social media. But with the rumor of Bad Bunny taking part in this, and maybe Logan Paul, who is probably the greatest celebrity to transition full-time into WWE, in my opinion. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys transition from different worlds like professional sports and MMA and, amateur wrestling, and they've done a pretty good job. But, I mean, for someone as gifted as him, Logan Paul, I think the transition has been the smoothest it's ever been. My opinion, the greatest celebrity to transition over to WWE, professional wrestling. So let's get to it. Top 5 celebrity WrestleMania matches coming in. Like honorable mention, I'm gonna give a couple honorable mentions, as a matter of fact. One being from WrestleMania 37, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest defeating The Miz and John Morrison. For considering the fact that was the first wrestling event to feature a large audience. They had 25,000 people at that WrestleMania. That show really wasn't a great WrestleMania, and I think a lot of the big names that we would have hoped that were going to be a part of this WrestleMania did not take part in it, because I think the company wanted to reward the talents that were involved, that stuck through during the pandemic with the Thunderdome and the Empty Performance Center and shit like that. But you still wanted to kind of dress this up a little bit and kind of treat it like it's a WrestleMania, and that's where Bad Bunny comes in. And, I'm not too familiar with his music, okay? But his appearance at WrestleMania, getting involved, pretty much, he didn't phone it in whatsoever. He went all in and kind of woke that crowd up a little bit, to be perfectly honest with you. That crowd was the crowd, was kind of up and down throughout the course of that night, but his performance in the match, it was one of the better celebrity performances. Doesn't make my top 5, but I got to mention it. It gets an honorable mention in my top 5, outside of my top 5, because he did such a fantastic job for his first time ever doing it. And then he would prove that even further with the match at Backlash in Puerto Rico against Damian Priest a couple of years later. So whatever he does at this WrestleMania this year, I think he's gonna do it well. He's gonna go all in because he loves doing it. So, and I think it's going to be a good shot in the arm for this year's WrestleMania if he is truly a part of it in a match, whether that's with Logan Paul, whether that's with Dominic Mysterio, whether that's with whoever. I think he'll have a memorable performance, to say the least. All right, coming in at number 5 from WrestleMania 38, Sami Zayn against Johnny Knoxville from Jackass. That WrestleMania felt like a WrestleMania. Okay, 2 nights, Dallas, and you had a little bit of everything. You had marquee matchups with the current roster. You had Steve Austin returning as a legend against Kevin Owens, and then you had some celebrity involvement. Pat McAfee had a match with Austin Theory, and then this one, Johnny Knoxville and Sami Zayn. I don't know what it was, if it was because it was the first real WrestleMania or it was just they did such a great job, but man, I had so much fun watching that match. Between the commentary and all the bits, the jackass stunts that were involved, you had Wee Man, Michael Cole going crazy for Wee Man coming out and going after Sami Zayn. It was just a lot of fun. Really, it was. Knoxville didn't phone it in either, and it made for him and Sami Zayn, the chemistry they had there, it made for a fun show. Fun match, I should say. I really enjoyed it. Go out of your way to watch that match. That was a lot of fun. And even like I said, Michael Cole and Pat McAfee on commentary made it so much fun. They were so excited. It was one of those situations where like I felt like a kid watching it. And I don't have a huge attachment to Johnny Knoxville and the Jackass brand. I've seen the movies; they're pretty funny, but I thought that this was very well done. The whole setup from start to finish, and even though the finish was a little botched, with the rat trap bar not coming down like it was supposed to on Sammy, they still made it a fun match. And crowd was into it, and I really enjoyed it. So that comes in at number 5. Number 4, from WrestleMania 24, The Big Show taking on Floyd Mayweather. While I was doing some research on this, this was not the original plan. The original plan was Big Show and Mayweather would team up as a team to take on Batista and Rey Mysterio. But Rey Mysterio's tricep injury forced them to change the course. Now, the setup getting to this was pretty fun to watch. Big Show returns. He had been gone for over a year. And he comes back. He targets Rey Mysterio after Rey Mysterio lost his world title match. Floyd Mayweather sitting front row. He's friends with Rey Mysterio. He hops over the railing. He punches Big Show in the face and breaks his nose. And then Big Show goes to chase after him. Shane McMahon shows up, who's hardly ever on television, but he was involved. The commentary didn't say a word throughout the entire time, kind of making you think that there was a chance that this wasn't planned, that this was, a shoot. And we were off to the races. Now, in that moment, because Big Show had targeted Ray and Mayweather got a pretty good pop from the audience, you originally thought, well, Big Show's the heel, Floyd Mayweather's the babyface. But the WWE audience kind of flipped that switch a little bit because of who Floyd Mayweather is. He's a cocky, arrogant, professional boxer, flashy, likes to show off his money and all his toys. And it's something that most people can't really relate with. And a lot of people are jealous of. They're envious of it. They hate it. And Big Show used that into getting people to get behind him because he's the guy that's going to be protecting the industry from Floyd Mayweather, who's coming in and trying to use it as a stepping stone. I thought the way that they pivoted was really good. And it managed to work out very well for them. The match itself was a fun match to watch. Mayweather playing the little chicken shit heel, Big Show chasing him around, Mayweather's crew getting involved, Big Show disposing of them. The finish comes when Mayweather nails Big Show with a chair numerous times because it's a no disqualification match. Then he takes off his glove, puts on a pair of brass knuckles given to him by his manager, knocks out Big Show, and your winner is Floyd Mayweather, keeping the undefeated streak alive at that time. That was what they were also hyping too. I was in attendance at that WrestleMania, and it was fun to watch. It was definitely fun, and it brought a lot of attention to the show. It kind of, I liked how they hyped, Mayweather, the best fighter in the world, against Big Show, the largest athlete in the world. They made it a spectacle. They did a great job of it, and that's what WrestleMania celebrity matches were all about, and that one definitely delivered. It was no different. So that comes in at number 4 on my list. Number 3, this one I was kind of toying with whether I put it at number 2 or number 1 because it's one of my favorite celebrity matches, but in terms of the quality of the match and the build-up, it comes in at number 3. And that is from WrestleMania 11, Bam Bam Bigelow against Lawrence Taylor from the New York Football Giants, as they like to say. WrestleMania 11 took place in my hometown, Hartford, Connecticut. Begged my parents to go to this show. My parents, they were kind of people that they robbed Peter to pay Paul, but on this occasion, they were not doing that for WrestleMania, but they said, well, we'll let you order it. You can watch it and have some friends over. So I thought, yeah, cool, great. WrestleMania. And I'm a New York Giants fan, big Lawrence Taylor fan, my favorite football player of all time. He's still on my bucket list of guys I want to meet. And so the setup with Bigelow shoving LT, who was sitting in the front row at the Royal Rumble because he felt disrespected, I thought was a good way to kick things off. LT accepting Bigelow's challenge, then him assembling his football buddies to join him to counteract Bigelow and the $1 Million Team. Even at 12 years old, I didn't have any grand illusions that Lawrence Taylor was going to be, performing at a high level and giving us this 5-star wrestling match. I saw this as a fight, and that's exactly what they gave us. They didn't do a whole lot, but what they did was believable, and it made sense, and to the point where LT was so gassed. Either he did a great job at selling or he was just so gassed that, they had to carry him out of the ring after he won the match. And it's one of those matches where, celebrity matches, I should say, where, yeah, it didn't set the world on fire, but for that time period at WrestleMania 1995, the business was not in a great place. LT had just retired like 2 years prior. It definitely it got some attention. It got some attention locally in this area, in the Northeast. Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. People from the tri-state area converged to this WrestleMania, even though it was in a smaller venue, because Lawrence Taylor was going to be a part of it. Now, the big controversy surrounding LT was the fact that him and Bigelow got the main event, and Diesel and Shawn didn't. And people to this day still think Diesel and Shawn should have got the main event, and rightfully so. I don't blame them. But LT Bigelow was such a huge spectacle, I think they had no choice but to put this on as the main event. And I think they delivered. It wasn't a great match, but it was still fun to watch, and it was believable, and it resembled a fight. And if I believe it and I enjoy it, then I think that I think then it was a success. So that comes in at number 3, Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow. Number 2, and this was the one that I was kind of back and forth with about putting as the number 1 spot, but this is the celebrity WrestleMania match that set the tone for every celebrity WrestleMania match moving forward. And this comes in at number 2, and it's the main event of WrestleMania 1. Hulk Hogan and Mr. T against Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. I was 2 years old when this match took place. I did not watch this WrestleMania live. I didn't start watching wrestling till probably about 86. Okay. So like a year following this. And the spectacle, upon doing research and watching documentaries and watching old footage of like the buildup of this, like this was a big deal. This was huge. Mr. T was a huge star in television, the star of the A-Team. He was this television, tough guy. This persona that he had was larger than life. And you paired him with Hulk Hogan, who was larger than life, against the brash, loudmouth Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Muhammad Ali, the guest referee. You had Snuka and Hogan in T's corner. You had Bob Orton and Piper in Orndorff's corner. It was a spectacle, and it was it laid the foundation for the celebrity matches moving forward and what they're designed to be. And I've said this before. I will repeat it and say it again. I think Mr. T's influence on this match is underrated. After watching a lot of footage of the build-up, I think more people wanted to see Mr. T and what he was going to do to Roddy Piper. I don't think people were. I'm sure people were excited to see Hogan, but I think the real focus was T and what he was going to do to Piper. And they had limited interactions because of T's physical capabilities, but he played his part really well. And I remember seeing an interview with Piper number of years ago where Piper stepped in when the original finish was Mr. T was going to be the one to get the pinfall. Mr. T was going to either pin Piper or Orndorff. I don't know who. And Piper stepped in and said, no way. You're going to kill this thing. You're going to overexpose him. It's going to make the rest of us look like, dog shit. Give the finish to Hogan. And so they changed the finish, and it was Hogan that would end up pinning Orndorff after the mistiming of Bob Orton with the hard cast, nailing Orndorff. And all was right with the world. So now it would be interesting if they did give T the finish and had him pin, let's say, Orndorff or even Piper. Even I know Piper probably wouldn't have gone for it, but it would be interesting to see how that would look in hindsight with Mr. T getting the pinfall. But nonetheless, his times in the match were memorable. The airplane spin on Piper, some interaction with Orndorff. He didn't do too little, but he didn't do too much either. And like I said, this match laid the foundation for what celebrity matches were moving forward. So that's why this comes in at number 2. It's not number 1, but it comes in number 2. The number 1 celebrity WrestleMania match on my countdown is from WrestleMania 28. The Rock and John Cena, once in a lifetime. At that time, at least that's how they build it. The reason why I chose this match number 1 was because I think this had such a great impact on the industry that The Rock, who was a huge Hollywood star, okay, now granted, yes, he started out in wrestling, went to Hollywood, but most people know who he is from his movies, not from his wrestling. And the fact that the lead actor from The Fast and Furious and all these other great movies that he put out is in the main event of WrestleMania against John Cena, the number 1 guy in WWE, in all of wrestling, was huge. Huge. They announced the match a year prior, the night after WrestleMania 27. Cena challenged The Rock. I was in attendance for that announcement. It was huge. Okay? And to be able to have the audience wait with bated breath for a year to see these two go at it, to me, it worked out perfectly. And the match, I think, was a fun match. And just being there in attendance, that city in Miami, I know it's The Rock's hometown, but I had plenty of discussions with plenty of fans, and there were a lot of John Cena supporters there, a significant amount. And whenever, the days leading up to that event, there were 3 things that fans discussed. One was Daniel Bryan and this Yes movement that was starting to stir up. The other was the Hell in the Cell. Is Undertaker's streak finally going to come to an end against Triple H with Shawn Michaels as the referee? And then, of course, Rock and Cena. And I feel like from the conversations I had with a fair number of other wrestling fans like myself, there was a divide. I saw a lot of John Cena t-shirts in that stadium that night. That's for damn sure. Okay? So I think because The Rock's celebrity status and he blew up and he became such a big name in Hollywood, I think that really helped make this match with Cena the greatest celebrity wrestling match at WrestleMania in WrestleMania history. They would do it again the following year at MetLife. I was in attendance for that one too. Twice in a lifetime. I know a lot of people had a hard time with that one, especially because the championship was involved. But nonetheless, to me, Rock, Cena, they blew it out of the park. And yes, Rock was a performer once in wrestling, but his Hollywood resume overshadows that, and that helped grow this WrestleMania and make it one of the most memorable matches in WrestleMania history. And that's why it makes my top 5 WrestleMania celebrity matches here on this Rand-O-Mania 2, which is coming to an end. It's about that time. Thank you all. Press and play, downloading, liking, subscribing, rating, reviewing. I greatly appreciate it. We got more WrestleMania content coming up for all of you. I promised last year that we would cover WrestleMania 6, and unfortunately I had some technical difficulties, but be on the lookout in the coming weeks. WrestleMania 6 will be on the streams, and I'll be recapping it for all of you, so be on the lookout for all of that, as well as other WrestleMania-related content, some special watch-alongs and things like that. So it's WrestleMania season. I loaded up, and it's no different. So thank you all again, and I think it's time. I think it's about that time. We put this one officially down for the 3 count, and we'll see you all next time.